Hello, my name is Reverend Dr. May Elise Cannon. It's Wednesday, November 22nd, and today is day 47. Hostilities in Gaza have continued. There have been intense ground clashes between Israeli forces and Palestinian armed groups around Gaza City, as well as in other areas of the north, Jabalia in particular. The airstrikes and shelling by Israeli forces have also continued in multiple areas throughout Gaza, and Israeli ground troops have maintained the severance between the north in Gaza and the south along Wadi Gaza, except for the corridor, that roadway that we've seen the tens of thousands of Gazans who've been evacuating from the north to the south. The big news, which you probably have heard, is that a deal has been reached between the Israelis and Hamas via Qatar and the United States for the release of 50 hostages. This was just voted on last night by the Israeli War Cabinet, and the Israeli government and Hamas agreed to the release of 50 hostages held in Gaza in exchange for 150 Palestinians imprisoned in Israel. And in addition, the idea is that of the 50 hostages, 10 will be released at a time. And for each 10 released, it'll be 10 a day starting tomorrow, Thursday. For those of us in the United States, many will be celebrating Thanksgiving. And when 10 hostages are released, that would then ensure 1 day of a pause in the fighting, a cessation of hostilities, or a temporary ceasefire. So it's been agreed that there would be up to a 4-day pause in the fighting, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Also, a part of the agreement was entry of humanitarian aid into Gaza. And I don't know and have not found statistics on what that means, because we've been hearing about humanitarian aid into Gaza for a long time over the past several weeks. Officials from Qatar who've been mediating negotiations, as well as the US, Israel, and Hamas, have been saying this is the same deal we heard. If you remember, we talked about it last Wednesday, then on Saturday, then Sunday morning we woke up, we heard it was off. This is that same deal. Netanyahu's office said that it will be 50 women and children, and that he's the one that described for every 10 hostages released that the pause would be extended another day. And he said this: Israel's government is committed to the return of all hostages home. Tonight, I think he was referring to last night, it approved the proposed deal as a first stage in achieving this goal. And we know that the Israeli War Cabinet deliberated for hours, and that there were some in the War Cabinet who were opposed to the agreement. The quote continues, and Netanyahu said, "We are at war. We will continue to be at war until we achieve our goals." This is really important to understand, because Israel is not talking about a ceasefire. He continued to destroy Hamas, return all hostages, and ensure that no entity in Gaza can threaten Israel. This was a recorded message that was shared at the start of the government meeting. 3 Americans, including a 3-year-old girl whose parents were among those killed on October 7th, are expected to be among those released, the US reported. And implementing the deal, one of the dynamics is that in Israel, there has to be 24 hours where Israeli citizens have the chance to go to the Supreme Court to block the release of Palestinian prisoners. And so what we're waiting for is to see if anyone in Israel, and I don't know the Israeli legal system enough to know the specifics, but this is supposed to start tomorrow if there are not issues raised at the Israeli Supreme Court. So Churches for Middle East Peace, we put out just a quote today. We plan on putting out a statement tomorrow. We support this. Oh my goodness, for 50 hostages to come home. We've been calling for their release. We pray that it'll happen safely. I know that one of the things Netanyahu wanted to have happen was the Red Cross to be able to check all the other hostages. I have not seen whether or not that was included in the deal, but we absolutely support the release of hostages. We hear that the prisoners, I don't know that this is confirmed, but it's been said that they would be women and children, Palestinian prisoners. So we support this, but friends, this is not enough. A temporary ceasefire to just start bombing in 4 days is still catastrophic. And so many children, the statistics, we haven't had numbers from OSHA for the number of deaths in days. And so we are calling for a permanent ceasefire. We're calling for an end to all hostilities between Hamas and Israel. We're calling for core issues to be addressed. And so we really, really must continue that plea. And we invite you to join us in that. And I'll give you a couple ways to do so in just a minute. I wanted to also let you know there still have been significant attacks on health facilities, according to OSHA, the Office of the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs, and UNRWA. So on the 21st of November, which today is the 22nd, so yesterday, Al-Awada Hospital in North Gaza came under attack. 4 doctors were killed and many patients were injured. The Médecins Sans Frontières, a French agency that operates in the hospital, called for the urgent and safe evacuation of more than 200 patients. The World Health Organization has documented 178 health attacks in the Gaza Strip that has resulted in 22 fatalities and 48 injuries among healthcare workers, which are supposed to be protected by international law. The Indonesian hospital in Beit Lahia in North Gaza, 500 patients and staff were evacuated on the 21st to a hospital in the south in Khan Yunis, in coordination with humanitarian agencies. This followed an attack the previous day that hit the hospital and killed at least 12 people, according to WHO, the World Health Organization. So there's significant concerns. This says, hospitals remain surrounded by Israeli troops and tanks. And, we have heard reports that maybe there are militants hiding in hospitals. That may very well be true. According to international law, it does not justify the killing of civilians or the attacking of hospitals. For healthcare workers, such as physicians and others, to be killed in the middle of conflict is just so horrific. Also, this last few days, an UNRWA school in Al-Barej camp in the middle area that was sheltering displaced people was reportedly hit by artillery fire, and at least 12 people were killed and 35 were injured. So what happens next? Israel has vowed that if this hostage exchange continues and if there is a pause in fighting, the military campaign in Gaza will continue. And not only that, we're hearing that it will move south, which will have devastating effects because the southern part of the enclave is where the population moved to, 1.6 million people being displaced. Most of the population is in the south. And so we're hearing that the second or the next phase of fighting would be in that part of Gaza, which would just have even more devastating effects. Just lastly, I want to tell you a few ways you can get involved. We are having our briefing tomorrow, Thursday. I know many are celebrating with your families. Please keep in thought and prayer Palestinians and Israelis who have lost family members. Pray for them at your Thanksgiving dinner. Pray for them, grieve alongside of them. But we'll do a briefing tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. Next week, we do our community calls to Congress on Monday, our Wednesday prayers, our Thursday briefing. We have some webinars and educational opportunities that you can keep an eye out for. Our Monday prayer vigil that we did earlier this week in front of the White House. That video was just released today. You can see that online. Please consider joining us this Advent to join us in every day calling your members of Congress to call for a ceasefire. If you love the Jewish people of Israel, call for a ceasefire. If you love the Palestinian people and want them to have human rights, call for a ceasefire. If you want this horrific bombing campaign of Gaza to be brought to an end, call for a ceasefire. And finally, we'd invite you to come to Washington, D.C. We're having a prayer gathering on Monday, December 11th. There will be other activities around those few days as well. So consider coming to Washington, D.C. and interceding and letting your government know, that you care and that you stand with us in calling for a ceasefire. So that's our invitation. Blessings to you and your families as we continue to work toward peace.